Hello, National University Academy students. This is Mr. Goyette going over with you a little bit of information for your World History B course that will help you on the assessment and your CST testing. Let's start with setting the stage for the social environment in world history during the period leading up to World War II. Let's first start off talking about a scientist by the name of Albert Einstein, who's going to come up with this theory of relativity. This is on page 896 of your world history textbook. He's going to talk about the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second. And in his theory, energy equals mass multiplied by the speed of light squared. That means a small amount of energy or small amount of matter can have an immense amount of energy in it. It's going to lead to the observations that are going to lead to the atomic bomb and the work that Oppenheimer is going to do on the Manhattan Project in Los Alamos. E is energy, M is mass, C is the speed of light, or 3 times 10 to the 8 meters per second. Socially, or at least in the arts, I should say, prominent writers such as Franz Kafka, James Joyce are influential. F. Scott Fitzgerald are all known for being prominent novelists that are being read in and around this time. So you may have had to read these in your world lit classes or your English classes or American lit classes. Great Gatsby. If you haven't read it, you'll probably read it at some point. It's a staple in American high schools. Franz Kafka's The Trial. Good stuff. You'll probably read The Metamorphosis, his short story, if you haven't already. And James Joyce, The Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man. He's also known for his book Ulysses and Finnegan's Wake. Influential ideas, philosophers such as Friedrich Nietzsche are being influential. Of course, Hitler's going to steal some of his ideas. Nietzsche had a zero tolerance for anti-Semites, thought they were complete wackos, and didn't believe in any racial superiority whatsoever. And when he was talking about the will to power, he certainly wasn't. He was talking about artists, not leaders, artistically minded people, not necessarily dictators. But of course, Hitler's going to seize upon these ideas and use them to fuel the ideological idiocy of his Third Reich. So let's look at, keep going with setting the stage for World War II. After World War I, most European nations that had a type of government that was democratic. They were unstable new democracies. So in Italy, Germany, you saw with the economic devastation of the collapse in the United States, the stock market crash of 1929, other parts of the world were really hurting economically, burning whole wheelbarrows full of dollar bills, or in this case, German marks, because they were useless, or having to bring the wheelbarrow full of money to buy a loaf of bread. So the big event that led off this major economic crash, it talks about it on page 904, these unstable democracies. Well, how did those come about? Well, that came about on page 906. It talks about the stock market crash of 1929. So in your world history textbook, Patterns of Interaction, you'll see that it talks about the stock market of 1929 as a real catalyst, or one of those dominoes that's going to knock a whole lot of other things over, to leading to this real world, or this global depression. What was one part of Roosevelt's New Deal program to fight the depression? These are large public works projects. Hoover started things off with, of course, the Hoover Dam, among other things, and he had also started the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, much like Obama is now. He was bailing out banks at the time and trying to shore up and save the financial institutions of the country. He also shot our veterans at the Bonus Army incident, so which I find funny, because they're calling Obama a dictator, and they're freaking out about him right now a little bit on the news. Hoover shot veterans. Not a whole lot of, I mean, this is not like this is, they're talking about like it's unprecedented. These things never happen. Well, history's interesting. Actually read it and you might find some interesting facts in there. What was one of Roosevelt's New Deal programs? Large public works projects to help to provide jobs. So yes, he threw a lot of money at the problem and tried to motivate people to get off the couch and work to improve the United States. So what's going on in Italy at this time? Il Duce. Il Duce was the leader of Italy, Mussolini, Benito Mussolini, and Mussolini is a fascist. What other countries were being tempted by the lures of fascism at this time? You have Germany, Italy, and Japan, and this is on page 911. You're going to find information on Mussolini also on page 911 where it talks about fascism. And at this time in Spain, Franco is starting to gain control of Spain. Pan's Labyrinth is an interesting movie to watch. I'm not exactly all that historically focused on Spain at the time, but a pretty interesting movie nonetheless. All three governments, in this case, that will become the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan, are the Axis powers, are fascist countries. The German political party sought to overturn the Treaty of Versailles and combat communism. Was the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or the Socialists, right? Now, Hitler actually killed other socialist parties, killed them off, rounded them up and killed their members. He also killed communist sympathizers, Jews, gypsies, homosexuals, anyone he didn't like. So he really wasn't of any firebrand group, because he would kill any socialist that didn't agree with his brand of socialism, which was more fascism than anything else. He was twice awarded the Iron Cross for bravery, and he started his stormtroopers, early at the time known as the Brown Shirts. What term was used to identify the alliance of Germany, Italy, and Japan? I mentioned that earlier. That's on page 917. That's the Axis powers. For the information on the National Socialist German Workers' Party, that's on page 912 of your textbook. So yes, the Axis powers on page 917, Germany, Italy, and Japan. The earlier alliance before Japan joined the group between Germany and Italy was called the Rome-Berlin Axis, and that was they were unified in that agreement on October 1936. Gives you a bit of a timeline there. What was the goal of the U.S. isolationists after World War I? Well, we knew that isolationists have always had a platform in the United States, waning and waning more and more as the United States becomes a world power. And by the time of Roosevelt, with the strength of the Monroe Doctrine and other things that kept us involved in world affairs, in addition to trade and other responsibilities around the world, the United States, under Woodrow Wilson, tried to remain isolationist. And again with FDR, even though there's a lot going on in Europe, FDR is trying to go sit down with the Japanese and have these peace talks. Well, as the peace talks are going, boom, Pearl Harbor happens. That's going to pull us into the war immediately. Not that we weren't already concerned about what was going on in Europe. We hadn't paid too much attention to the Holocaust. Our State Department wasn't too sympathetic to reports of the Holocaust at the time. And the German-American Bund was sympathetic to Nazis, as was the Ford car makers and many Americans who felt that also didn't like Jews. In fact, there were still beaches where it said no Jews or dogs allowed in the United States. So it wasn't like the United States was this bastion it wasn't a Jew place for Jews to come and flourish. It was often very angry towards Jews as well. That's going to change, of course, and our relationship with Israel now proves that. Not that, let's see, going on. So, talked about the Axis powers, 917. All of the following were examples of aggression by the Axis powers prior to 1939, except German arms sales to Spain. I'm going to pause it here. I'm going to come right back with you for more information on World War II. I'm going to pause it here and be right back.